Okay, so when we do a t-test, there's a couple of assumptions of these t-tests. I'm going to walk through these just so you have an idea of what we're talking about. So when we are looking at these assumptions of a t-test, there we go. So for both the independent and the dependent t-tests, they are parametric tests, okay? And they are based on a normal distribution. So when we did those earlier chapters and we talked about homogeneity of variance, we talked about PP plots, we talked about skewness and kurtosis, that's what we're talking about here. So that's a normal distribution. So we are assuming, because these are assumptions, that the sampling distribution from our sample is normally distributed, all right? So the scores in the dependent t-test, so the scores of pre and post, are normally distributed, and also in the independent t-test as well. So I've also got here data are measured at least on the interval level. All right, so this is continuous data. So interval or ratio data are used for this t-test. If this is not interval or ratio data, we can use some of the non-parametric techniques that we talked about earlier. The independent t-test, because it's used on different people, also assumes that the variances in these populations are roughly equal, so the homogeneity of variance, and that the scores in these groups are independent. So let me just go back a little bit to the homogeneity of variance. So in this case, I may be looking at males and females, and differences in males and females. And in essence, what I'm going to say is that the spread of the scores in the males is the same as the spread of the scores in the females, which allows us to compare those means. Those means may be different, all right? So if I'm looking at flexibility between males and females, men may have an average flexibility of 7, women may have an average flexibility of 12, but the way those scores are spread around those means are the same for an independent t-test, okay? And then the scores in the different treatment conditions are independent. In other words, if you come and you say, I'm going to measure males and females, the male can't be a female. All right, I use the example sometimes when I'm looking at athletes at D1 and D3. All right, so an athlete that you measure at the D1 level cannot be that same athlete who maybe transfers to a D3. That person, you can't use their data because they were a D1 and you measured them. Okay, they're no longer independent. So the independent is they belong to independent groups. So those are the assumptions of the t-test, and we'll look at some of them when you do the analysis.